Approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. To approve, there's no new business, so let's move right into old business. UDO continuation from March 16th, 2022 meeting, including public comment, and March 28th, 2022 meeting. Just a reminder, tonight public comment is not allowed since this is a continuation, and we already had public comment and went ahead and closed it on the 6th. Yeah.
Okay, so as you all were and are aware, commissioners had submitted some text amendments to our Pulaski County ordinance of section 2, 4, 7, and 8. Based on March 16th and March 28th meeting, you had semi-agreement in regards to some adjustments to the recommendations that were brought to you. And the list that you all had emailed to you, as well as what was discussed Monday evening and is printed out, and some people out have this copy. First is for a clarification in regards to, you had said you wanted the section 2.3R to read it was a special exception application. Technically, that is in section 4.1, the use standards charts on page 102, which states, in the recommendation, commercial solar energy is permitted use in A1 and A2. APC's recommended response is to keep it as a special exception in A1 and A2. Comments, questions? You're still, okay. Next one, section 14.A.1, current language in Pulaski County's ordinance is in 7.14.B1, reading panels, and this is present language in our ordinance. All SES shall be constructed of commercially available equipment with a UL listing or approved equivalent. The commissioner's recommendation reads, panels, all CSES shall be constructed of commercially available equipment that conforms to applicable industry standards. APC's recommended response to commissioner's text amendments to read, panels, all CSES shall be constructed of commercially available equipment that conforms to applicable industry standards at date of application. Good. Okay. Section 7.14.D.2, Commissioner's recommended text amendment that the APC received reads, danger and high voltage signs shall be posted at a height of 5 feet at entrances and every 600 feet along the fence. APC's recommended response to Commissioner's text amendments to read, danger and high voltage signs shall be posted at the height of 5 feet at entrances and every 600 feet along the fence or as industry standards require. Section 14E1, Commissioner's recommended text amendments to APC reads, all solar panels shall be built to resist wind speeds of at least 90 miles per hour. APC recommended response to read, all solar panels shall be built to resist wind speeds of at least 112 miles per hour. .14.F.1, Commissioner's recommended text amendment reading, standards, all electrical components of all SES shall conform to applicable local, state, national, and international codes and standards. APC's recommended response to the Commissioner's text amendments to read, all electrical components of all SES shall conform to applicable local, state, national, and international codes and standards to NEC regulations at date of application. Seven, herbicide and pesticides applications should be in keeping with best practices in state law and only by licensed chemical applicators. APC recommended response to Commissioner's text amendment reads, all herbicides applications should be performed in keeping with best practices and state law and only by licensed pesticide applicators. Seven point 15.8.1, noise and glare. Noise from a CSES shall not exceed 60 decibels measured from the nearest property line, etc. This is Commissioner's recommended text amendments to APC. The APC's recommended response to Commissioner's text amendments to read, noise from a CSES shall not exceed 50 decibels measured from the property line, etc. Did anybody have any additions, adjustments, questions, comments, recommendations beyond what you discussed on the 16th and the 28th and the language on the paper that I had just read based on your discussion from the last couple meetings?
Does anybody on the board have any motions?
I'll make a motion to accept this as the Commissioner's recommendation.
I'll second it.
All right, let's take a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 This is without the amendments. All opposed, signify by saying nay. Nay.
Hands for voting for, please.
Four.
Okay. Opposed, hands.
Okay, so the motion does not carry. We had 2 for, 5 against, and 1 abstained from voting. Does anybody else want to proceed with another motion?
I've actually got a, can Nathan tell us about the A1? And you say,
President will allow it.
Yes.
So I want to, first, I need to clarify a couple of things from last meeting. One where I maybe didn't say anything or wouldn't emphasize enough, and I can't remember. Another where I was mistaken. When I raised the possibility of countering the commissioner's decision to remove the special exception entirely with what I think is something of a compromise of allowing it by right only in the A2 district, so that it would in almost all cases require a zoning change. One of you brought up the question about conditions and commitments, and I said that as I read the code, the Plan Commission cannot tack those on to zoning changes. However, I was partially mistaken. The Plan Commission doesn't have the authority to put any conditions on a zoning change, but Indiana Code 3674-1015 does you to put commitments on it. So if you go back to the Mammoth BZA approval, there were conditions, and nearly all of those ended up being reflected in the round of ordinance changes made after that approval, so that when Moss Creek's application came through, the property value guarantee might have been the only commitment or one of the only ones that was attached to it. So I don't know that other than the PVG, I don't know that there are a whole lot of conditions and commitments that would still be necessary with these projects. So if you were to go to so then the second thing I need to point out is, although we've never really addressed it, technically under the ordinance, if we go the special exception route, any project needs to have two public hearings. The special exception hearing by the BZA, but also based on Chapter 2, Section 3D, I think, a plan commission public hearing for the review and approval of the development plan is required. So we've got all of these requirements in the development plan at their application to the BZA, but those plans still need a two-step approval by the plan commission before the final permits can be awarded. One of them requires a public hearing, the primary development plan. The second one, which is basically the as-built, is after any commitment specific to that plan has been initiated, any changes have been made. That one doesn't require another public hearing, but it does just require the administrator sign off. So right now we've had the one hearing, two for Mammoth technically. We've had the one special exception hearing, but even if those clear the legal challenges and or resubmission through the BZA, a second one will still be necessary. If you made this a by right in the A2, which would in most cases require rezoning, the public hearing would still be there, but the plan commission could probably adopt rules to allow those to be jointly held, so you don't have to go through the same thing twice, and you would just make sure that their primary development plan is done up front. I think whether it's been stated very clearly or not, I think we all know that one of the reasons that the commissioners have contemplated removing the special exception is because of the tens of thousands of dollars in attorney bills we have racked up. As landowner's attorney and I have both stated, while a zoning change still can be challenged, and if either Mr. Kuchme or Mr. Tram wants to correct or adjust what I say, please do, because I'm not the lawyer in the room. Because changing the zoning is literally changing county law, while petitioner can file against that, the burden is substantially greater because you're essentially suing the county legislative body for making laws. So it would probably cut down on the time period and the drawing out and the attorney's costs on that matter, while still protecting, the members of the public and Carla from having to have too much of the decision making all on her without review of all of your eyes, while still not having the two public hearings that are currently required. And I am wondering, the commissioners may say, no, we just don't want any public hearing other than the one that's required for development plan review. If you send them a recommendation they reject, it's got to come back to you. And then you can either accept their changes or not, and it'll go back, and it could go back 2-3 times before it is either dead or ends up being what the commissioners want out of it anyway. So I can't speak for Mike, I can't speak for Chuck. I don't know if Mr. Lamer will vote this time or recuse himself as he did when the commissioner sent this to you. But keeping one public hearing that combines the approval process and the review process in one and doesn't get rid of but lessens the county's risk for legal challenges might be a compromise that the commissioners could agree with that would keep this from having the commissioners kick it back to you for you to kick it back to them yet again. Jason, did I get the law right on that? Or right enough?
Hard to say. I would disagree, to some extent on the legal challenges. And certainly if something is a permitted use, it's a different challenge. There's no question, but there are some obvious procedural issues and ways to attack that today. I did actually send an email to Carla with the council today, just kind of outlining some of the notice defects and whatnot, just with kind of where we are and what led to today. But certainly as a permitted use, it would be a different challenge with other obstacles, correct? Yes.
Would anybody on the board want to discuss this? Have any questions, comments?
Well, if it doesn't pass the way the commissioners recommended, why doesn't it pass the way the APC? Why doesn't somebody make a motion?
Would anybody like to make a motion?
Passes.
as the APC has recommended response to commissioners.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Todd second. All right, take a vote. All in favor? Let's say aye and raise your hand for it to pass. Okay. Those opposing, state by saying nay.
It's not a quorum, or not a majority of quorum, it's the majority of the entire board to take official action.
All right, let's go ahead and do a revote.
Right?
Those in favor of accepting the APC recommended response to the commissioner's text amendments, state by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, state by saying nay. Okay, looks like we motion to pass the APC recommended response to the commissioner's text amendments is 7, 4 vote and 1 abstained. Okay, we don't have any other business. We will open the floor to public comment about this meeting, but not old business. We're opening the floor to public comment about the meeting alone, but not old business.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
I would like to ask a question, if I could. So what is the vegetative buffer description then?
That was old business.
Well, no, because, I thought they changed it and it's not in here, so didn't I read listed in this as being one of the changes that you were proposing?
we didn't propose any changes to send back.
I think the short answer is even though the commissioners verbally said they wanted that, they never put that in writing as part of their proposal to the commissioners. So it doesn't really exist. It was not put in writing as part of their proposal. They adopted at the day of their meeting when they voted.
So it stands as the UDO was written, back in,
Early 2021. That's the most.
November 2020.
I don't have.
That's actually a good question.
Oh,
While I think the we could assume that you meant to include, the way this motion was phrased kind of suggests that you only address the things on this. So, but are you accepting all of the proposed commissioners changes that were in writing that are not in this?
We approve the commissioner's recommendations with our adjustments that we read off tonight.
That work? Yeah. So the 84 or so changes, if it is not specifically adjusted on this document, they are accepting those other 77. The ones that were in writing. So the tree buffer, that was not in writing, removal of that, so that's still in the ordinance.
The reference to fire hazard is going to be removed.
That's that's part of the emergency response plan.
If you'd like to reconvene planning commission, do so. Otherwise, you're potentially violating open door if you're having discussion with the meeting being adjourned. So you still have the power to reconvene, but we had a motion in a second. I don't care what you do. I'm just saying procedurally, enter back into the meeting if you want to continue to have discussion on the
Yeah,
record
we
about it.
never did take a vote on the motion or the second.
It takes a first and a second to adjourn a meeting.
Oh, well, then, thank you.
I mean,
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. The next meeting will be held on Monday, May 23rd, garage.